He was shivering on a cold sidewalk, clutching a tattered backpack and a dog tag that told a story no one cared to read. To most people, he was invisible, just another homeless man society had written off. But when a police officer stopped him one night, things took a dark turn. The cuffs clicked, the man stayed silent, and the officer felt something he couldn't explain. Because one look at that dog tag would change everything. About the man, about the officer, and about what justice really means. Who was this homeless veteran? And why did his name send chills down the cop's spine? It was another freezing night beneath the city bridge, the kind that made every breath sting like glass. Marcus, once a proud Army sergeant, now survived on scraps and memories. His coat was torn, his boots soaked, and his mind haunted by flashes of battlefields that never really left him. Most people passed by without a glance, clutching their purses or locking their car doors tighter. To them, he was just another nameless face, a reminder of what they didn't want to see. But Marcus wasn't always invisible. He had once worn a uniform that demanded respect and served a country that now looked right through him. Every morning he tried to find work, only to be turned away with polite excuses or suspicious looks. The color of his skin didn't help, nor did the scars that told stories no one wanted to hear. Still, he held on to one thing, the small metal dog tag around his neck. It was the last piece of his identity, engraved with a name that once carried honor. And though his nights were long and his hope was fading, Marcus still believed that maybe, just maybe, tomorrow could be different. What he didn't know was that fate had already chosen this night, and one encounter would change everything. The night was quiet except for the hum of traffic and the faint rustle of newspapers blowing down the empty street. Marcus shuffled toward a diner's back alley, hoping to find leftovers in the trash. Hunger wasn't new to him. It was the one thing that stayed constant. But tonight, his weariness made every step heavy. As he bent down to tie the frayed lace of his boot, headlights washed over him. A police cruiser slowed to a crawl. The sound of the engine idling broke the silence, followed by the sharp crackle of a radio. Marcus straightened up, his heart pounding. He wasn't doing anything wrong. Still, he knew how these things often went for men who looked like him, especially at night, especially in neighborhoods where he didn't belong. The officer stepped out, flashlight in hand. The beam hit Marcus's face like an accusation. "Move along," the man barked. Not with words, but with posture, with a tone of authority that didn't invite questions. Marcus raised his hand slightly, a habit born from too many misunderstandings. He tried to explain he was just looking for food, that he meant no harm. But the officer's eyes narrowed, suspicion outweighing empathy. When Marcus reached into his pocket for his ID, the officer's hand moved faster, straight to his holster. In seconds, Marcus was face down on the concrete, the taste of dirt and humiliation thick in his mouth. The cold steel of the cuffs bit into his wrists. He wanted to protest, to tell the truth, but every word felt dangerous. Every breath reminded him of a truth he already knew too well, that sometimes being poor and black was all it took to be seen as a threat. Passers-by stared but didn't stop. A few recorded, whispering, shaking their heads, but no one stepped forward. The siren lights painted the street red and blue, like a cruel celebration of his downfall. As the officer searched his bag, tossing out what little he owned, the dog tag slipped free and clattered onto the pavement. The faint metal sound cut through the chaos, barely noticeable. But to Marcus, it was everything. His name, his history, his proof that he once mattered. The officer glanced at it briefly, uninterested, then turned back to the radio. "Possible trespassing," he said coldly, pressing the button. Marcus wanted to scream that he had served the same flag sewn onto that man's uniform, that he'd once worn it himself. But words didn't matter here. The cuffs tightened, the car door slammed, and as the cruiser pulled away, that small piece of metal, the one thing that still carried his story, gleamed faintly under the streetlight, waiting to be seen. Because before the night was over, it would be. And when the officer finally looked closer at that dog tag, everything would change. The police cruiser screeched to a stop outside the station, its lights still flashing against the cracked walls. Marcus sat in the back seat, wrists raw from the cuffs, staring at the floor. He felt small, smaller than he ever had, even in war. Outside, rain began to fall, washing dirt from the windows but not from the moment. The officer, still irritated, dragged Marcus out roughly and marched him toward the booking desk. "Found him loitering," he muttered to the clerk. But as Marcus stumbled, something metallic slipped from his torn coat, that same dog tag clinking onto the tile. The sound made the officer glance down. He bent to pick it up, annoyed at first, until his eyes caught the engraving. His hand froze midair. The letters were faint but unmistakable. Sergeant Marcus D. Turner, U.S. Army. His breath caught. That name, he'd seen it before. Years ago, on a dusty battlefield overseas, an armored convoy had been ambushed. Reports said a black sergeant had saved several soldiers, including a young officer, by dragging them out of the line of fire. That officer's name was Daniel Hayes, the same man now holding the dog tag in disbelief. The air in the room thickened. The rain outside grew louder, almost echoing the pounding in Hayes's chest. He looked up, his face pale, realization cutting deep. This man, this vagrant, had once saved his life. Marcus lifted his eyes slowly, weary but steady. Recognition flickered there too. For a moment, the world seemed to stop. The roles reversed, the truth undeniable. The hero in rags, the enforcer trembling. Hayes's grip loosened, the dog tag slipping from his fingers. It hit the ground again, louder this time, like a verdict. And in that sound lay a question that neither of them could escape. What had this country really done to its heroes? The station grew silent. The officer, Daniel Hayes, stood frozen, the dog tag trembling in his hand as realization settled like a weight on his chest. The man he had thrown into the mud, handcuffed without cause, was the same soldier who had once shielded him from gunfire. The same man who had carried him to safety when everyone else ran. Hayes unlocked the cuffs with shaking hands. Marcus didn't say a word. He didn't need to. The look in his eyes carried years of pain, betrayal, and quiet strength. Hayes tried to apologize, but the words collapsed under the gravity of what he'd done. Some wounds can't be healed with a sorry, especially when they're deeper than one night's mistake. Later, the police report disappeared quietly. No charges, no record. But the memory stayed. For Hayes, it became a haunting reminder of how easily bias can blind even those who wear the badge of honor. For Marcus, it was another scar. Proof that sometimes the greatest battles don't happen on foreign soil, but in the streets of the very country he fought to protect. Weeks later, a local news piece appeared. Homeless veteran reunited with officer he once saved. It was dressed as a feel-good story, a headline meant to inspire. But beneath the smiles in that photograph was a truth most would never see. A truth about how quickly a hero can become invisible once the uniform comes off, especially when the color of his skin changes how the world sees him. And one more question remains. How many more heroes will we ignore before we finally see humanity standing right in front of us? Because sometimes justice isn't about what happens in court. It's about whether we choose to look beyond the uniform and truly see each other. If this story moved you, don't let it end here. Stories like Marcus's are happening every day, unseen, unheard, and too often forgotten. But you can help make a difference. If you believe no one should be judged by the color of their skin or the clothes they wear, hit that like button to spread this message. Comment "I see you" below to honor every veteran, every underdog, every person fighting to be seen. Subscribe for more powerful real-life stories that reveal the truth, inspire empathy, and remind us what humanity really means. Because change doesn't start in the streets, it starts with awareness, and it starts with you.